welcome back to a double feature film chat show with myself, Paul Farron, and the good Wayne Byrne. Wayne, hello. Thanks for joining me.
You're very welcome, Paul. Glad to be
I,
here.
I wouldn't be able to do them on my own. So this week, it's been a while now. We've actually been very busy. Well, you've been busier than me working on the book, but we won't tell anybody about that for a while yet. But tell me, what is it we were supposed to be talking about tonight?
So this week, our team was sequels that we thought were better or as good than their classic originals. And I picked Psycho 2, and you picked Escape from the Planet of the Apes, you bad bastard.
And I didn't pick it because it was as good as the original. I just thought it was a good sequel.
We'll get into that.
Let's start with Psycho 2. How many years after Psycho was that made?
Okay, so the film was released in 1983. It's set 22 years after the original. And Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins, is about to be released and assimilated back into society. But much to the protestation of the sister of Marion Crane, who he killed in the first film. Lila Crane is played by Vera Miles, who returns from the first film. She's convinced he'll be a menace to society once again and go on a killing rampage. He's released. He gets a job in a diner. Bates Motel is being run by some sleazy guy called Norman Toomey, who's turned it into a den of iniquity and is dealing drugs, much to the chagrin of Norman. And Norman meets a young girl at the diner, a waitress named Mary Samuels, played by Meg Tilly. And she's a nice girl. She warms to Norman, and they seem to have a nice friendship, which blossoms. Sometimes you think it's going to turn into a romance, kind of a will it, won't it kind of thing. But there's a hidden agenda behind all of this that links Mary, Lila, and Norman. And, I don't want to go too much into spoiler territory because it's one of the great things about Psycho 2.
Well, no, okay, now this is where we kind of disagree. I say spoil, and if anyone wants it not to be spoiled, go and watch it and then come back and listen to us talking about it. Because I think one of the things to talk about is the differences between the two films. Why do you rate it as such a brilliant sequel?
To me, Richard Franklin, who was a great student of Alfred Hitchcock, with this film, he distilled all the great elements of Hitchcock from across his career into this one film. And it feels like a greatest hits of Hitchcock. Hitchcock was always very stylish anyway, but Franklin just ramps everything up to 11, you know what I mean? So it's kind of to the point where you're kind of thinking, is this pastiche? Is it beyond homage? Because some shots are so Hitchcockian in their framing, in their style, in the way they're pulled off. Some of them are almost identical to certain shots from the first film. So therefore, if you're a fan of the first film, you're instantly thinking, you're brought back to the first film, and you're thinking, okay, is it, like I say, is it pastiche, or is it just a true nod to the master? But I just think it's a wonderful film. I love the cinematography by the great Dean Cundy, who worked on famous work with John Carpenter, Back to the Future. But he brings the A game here. It's a stunning looking film. I love the tone of it. I love Jerry Smith's score, which is contemplative and scary and everything. The performances are brilliant. I think Norman is sympathetic. It's to Anthony Perkins' great credit, because we know as movie fans that things are going to turn sinister. But he still managed to elicit some kind of emotional responsiveness, and at times we feel sorry for him because he's being oppressed.
Well, he is essentially the victim for the whole movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the kind of the spoiler I didn't want to reveal. But there you go. Mary is a plant. Okay, so Mary is Lila's daughter, who is, trying to lure Norman back into his old ways and kind of, basically make him mad again. And Lila's going to, pounce on that and get him sent back to prison.
Yeah, they basically have this insane entrapment plan where they play mummy and they leave notes.
Appearing as images up in the, Mrs. Bates' window as Mrs. Bates, which of course rattles Norman. And but I don't know. I think it's for me it's a very nostalgic thing for me, this, because it was one of those films when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I had it recorded off the TV, and I would watch it at home on a Saturday morning, or I'd run around to my friend's house and we'd watch it sitting there under, a blanket or something, trying to scare ourselves witless. So it's, I'm looking at it now from a degree of kind of through a critical lens, but it can never take it out of that personal nostalgic thing. So but I do think it is as good or better than Hitchcock's original.
You'll be controversial again, Wayne.
Psycho is a masterpiece. No disputing that. But
I don't use that word masterpiece very often. Unless I'm talking about Hammer horror films.
I remember that. But I think it's just a brilliant, brilliant film. And it has the balls to open up with a scene from Psycho. So it's not shying away from the fact that this is, 22 years later, a sequel to a long considered classic, which is an audacious move, to remind audiences of a scene which has gone down in the canon of great scenes in the history of cinema, and then go and now enjoy the rest of the film after this, So it's a bold film. It has an interesting pedigree. You've Tom Holland, who went on to become a great director and writer.
Great script by Tom Holland, I have to say. I think it's a marvelous. As you said, the sympathy for the devil in that film is absolutely brilliant. Perkins, I think he deserved a nomination for that performance, to be quite honest.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I think Jerry Goldsmith's score cannot be underestimated in that sympathy, because it really gives him an underlying, not a romance. Romance is the wrong word, but a melancholy.
They avoided the joys of Bernard Herrmann because it was just too emblematic a score to go near again. You couldn't do anything but make a mess of it if you tried to go near it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of stings which might be considered Herrmann-esque, but for the most part, it's a very melancholic, very romantic score. And that's what I think gives the film its pathos and the kind of the lead in for sympathy for Norman, who really, you kind of go, should we have sympathy for him? He's a killer. And we know he's going to kill again because we're movie fans and we know these things. It's probably
the only film of that type that actually has a serious conversation about what evil is and what madness is. And without that film, I don't think the TV series of that would have existed today.
You mentioned the TV series there, and straight away I thought of fucking Bates Motel from 1987.
Well, that was an anthology series, wasn't it?
It was going to be, but I loved it. I thought that was brilliant. That was what's that actor's name from Harlan Maud? Bud Cort.
He was also the solicitor in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
And he did Brewster McCloud. But anyway, going off the subject. But just to come back, the film was a huge influence itself. Despite it did very well actually. It made money. It got us more sequels. It had mixed reviews. I read one contemporary review, which is very funny. I didn't read it back then. I read it recently, and it was someone giving out about Vera Miles taking a knife through the head, and how dare they do that to Vera Miles?
Straight through the mouth, and it comes out the back of the neck.
What I loved was this critic was so it was like some British person in the news giving out about treatment of the royals. I said she's an actress. She signed up for the job, and it wasn't actually her face the knife went through.
Well, thankfully.
Well, it should be mentioned as well. Meg Tilly's character, the daughter of what's her Mrs. Crane, whatever her name is,
Lila Crane,
who also I think marries her sister's boyfriend.
She married Sam Loomis.
From
the original film. Yeah. So that was that whole thing.
And he wasn't really dead. He was off fighting Michael Myers, wasn't he?
Little Halloween reference there, yeah, good man.
But Meg Tilly's sympathy for him is quite brilliant. That's where the heart of the story is.
Absolutely. I think the relationship is rather lovely in that film because, she does start to see the humanity in Norman. So when he does start to turn, it is kind of heartbreaking because you're seeing someone who seemed to be on the path to wellness.
I would argue that Psycho is a great opening and a great ending, and it's that weird little saggy middle in it.
That's one thing I don't think Psycho 2 suffers from. I don't think it lags one bit, even though it's probably a longer film than Psycho 1. I'm not sure if it is, but it doesn't lag for a minute. It's solidly paced.
But anyway, to get to that final scene, which is one of my favourite endings of any film.
Oh, yeah. On the steps.
There's a knock on the door. this woman comes in whom he's met at the canteen where he works, and turns out,
Kindly old lady who works at the canteen.
yeah, we've been talking up a possible other mother for Norman throughout the film and dropped little hints, and lo and behold, here she is. Mother turns out not to be the mother it was his aunt, and it all makes perfect sense. That it was a real tight walk of writing. And it's just great, and Norman and his toasted cheese sandwiches was a brilliant touch. He's always having a toasted cheese sandwich. And if you look at, there's like a refrain, the way that door is knocked at. People keep arriving at that door.
Yeah, and I love it's always the shadow first and then the knock. You have to allow time for the shadow to kind of emerge, and then we kind of go, oh, it's ominous, And there's some lovely little kind of Easter eggs in there for Hitchcock fans. There's one moment near enough to the start of the film when Norman brings Mary back to the house for the first time, and when she opens the door into Mrs. Bates' room, if you look carefully, the famous silhouette of Alfred Hitchcock is being projected.
The version I had turned out was a 4:3 version.
Oh no, you have the box set version.
Yes,
European...
but do you know something? It didn't take away from the movie.
Well, I think that version is open matte, so all the width is there. That's intended, but you're getting extra bottom and top.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
So it does give it a little bit of a TV. But when I first saw it years ago, when I taped it off the TV, it was 4:3. So I only had the luxury of enjoying it in widescreen in recent years. I got an American.
The entire past was 4:3, Wayne, but no one remembers it that way.
Well, I was one of those kids. I was a little bit nerdy. When widescreen videos started coming out, and you had to pay a little bit extra for them. That was an extra week or two's pocket money I had to save up and get.
Oh man, when I discovered that there was bits missing from all the films I'd been watching, I was what?
Yeah. And then you put it on, your friends were like, how can you get rid of the black bars?
Yeah, we were freaks, Wayne. But yeah, the real mom comes in, quiet conversation, a cup of tea, and then a shovel over the back of the head.
Yeah, but isn't there a weird kind of sense of humor throughout the film? Pitch black, I think that's in there. Even though it should be a shocking scene, it's underscored with a little bit of like black humor that just kind of, it makes sense, And then there's that beautiful final shot, of the house, and he's on the steps and the window, Mrs. Bates' room, the light is on. And it's just, again, it's that nod to the original and to all things kind of Psycho and Hitchcock that's great for fans, but I don't know. I think it adds up to a beautifully produced film. It's scary, it's emotional, it's funny in places, But I also have to pay a little tribute to Psycho 3, which Anthony Perkins produced. I love it. I think it's brilliant in its own way, but and in a completely different way to Psycho 2. Psycho 2 is very classy. I think it's very classily done, but Psycho 3 is very, very mid-80s horror. It has brilliant Carter Burwell score. It's very colorful. It's over the top in its violence, so it's perfect for, I think there's a nice little escalation there from Psycho 2 to Psycho 3 in terms of the 80s-ness.
But it always feels with Psycho 3 that they felt they had to compete with all the bad boys that were knocking around. And it kind of went Friday the 13th on it.
Yeah, and it's a more outwardly horror film. I mean, Psycho and Psycho 2, to me, are thrillers with horror elements, but I think Psycho 3 is full-blown, it's a horror movie. It's a slasher movie at that point. But I do love those first three just as a kind of a weird trilogy, because they're so different, each one of them, But you have a classy kind of golden age, beginning of horror genre kind of stuff.
Tell us a little bit about Richard Franklin.
Richard Franklin had a strange enough career. I mean, Road Games is probably the film that he did with Stacey Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis, which he's probably most known for outside of Psycho 2, or perhaps more known for, I don't know, depends on. And again, being a child of the 80s, I of course remember Link with Elizabeth Shue and FX 2 with Brian Dennehy and
Brian Brown.
And those are two films. Those are two films. No.
Brian Brown.
It's bad enough when I say it in an Ace accent. Jesus. But I'm not going to attempt Australian. But those are two films which are kind of become lost to time, haven't they? Effects and Effects.
I like Link. I thought Link. Yeah, and I remember the Effects movies. I don't think either of them got to the cinema over here. I know the second one didn't.
Yeah, I remember they're pretty big on video. I always remember them in the video.
They were fun.
Movies, yeah. But
bonkers.
none of the style and panache that you see in Psycho 2 or road games in those films. You know what I mean? Like Franklin was obviously when he was trying to emulate the masters, he was able to do it with ease. So as far as I know, Dean Cundey and Richard Franklin actually studied some of Hitchcock's films while they were making Psycho 2 because they wanted to replicate certain aesthetic elements of his shots. And when you think of Psycho 2, I think of some of those frames. It's the first thing that comes to mind. And one of them is a great shot that would have been impossible to actually pull off. So it's kind of a superimposition thing, where it's a shot when Norman is locked up in the attic, and the camera zooms out of him looking out of the window, and it looks down at the kids sneaking into the basement.
The moment where Friday the 13th is sneaking into the basement.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The kids are in there having a joint.
Let's have sex and some dope.
Yeah, and then they get done in.
Only one. Only one.
That's right, actually, yeah.
It was quite modest.
You know what I mean? That shot is incredible, but it was never going to be achieved physically, but you'd never know that. It's seamless. And then there's the shot of Dennis Franz, the sleazy motel manager, when he gets the knife across the face. It's like Detective Arbogast. It's like Balsam getting the knife across the face in Psycho 1. It's almost framed identically, so there's those little nods.
Yeah, I think a lot of the giving out about it were purists who were being sacred and they saw it as being sacrosanct to, oh, Hitchcock didn't need to stick a knife in anybody, all this kind of attitude.
So when you look at Hitchcock's later films, especially when you get to Frenzy, and Frenzy is far nastier, I think, than Psycho 2. So it gives you an idea of where
full of
Hitchcock
implications, though. Still full of implications rather than actual things.
I know, but it's still quite a nasty film in terms of the violence. I mean, it's a different level of violence for Hitchcock, and I think it shows where he could have or probably may have gone had he made movies later, had he lived longer. And I think Richard Franklin and Brian De Palma, who is obviously the natural successor to the Master of Suspense kind of thing.
How come he wasn't asked to do it?
God, yeah, but I'm kind of glad he did his Hitchcock movies. He did Body Double, he did Dress to Kill, so he didn't really need to actually literally do a Psycho 2. He's done enough Psycho homage and Hitchcock homage. I'm kind of glad he didn't. I think Psycho 2 is perfect. I'm glad Richard Franklin did it, and to me, it's a classic. I mean, it's a classic in its own right, whereas Psycho 2 is a classic in its own right. So I don't look at Psycho 2 as how dare you touch the master's work. You know what I mean? I think it's, as a standalone film, it's a masterpiece. As a sequel, it's absolutely brilliant and as good as the original. There you go, Your Honor.
On that note, we'll escape from Psycho 2.
Nice segue.
And escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Can I escape from the Planet of the Apes?
No, you're not allowed to insult my choice.
Too late. Go on, give it.
I'm not going to try and sell you a movie that you're already dying to hammer.
I'll be easy. My blows will be light.
Well, do you like Planet of the Apes movies to begin with? That's the first question. Or am I just wasting my time?
It's a series that I have absolutely no affection for.
Okay, I didn't realize I was forcing you to watch something terrible.
No. I've seen them. I own them. I've watched them many times over the years, but for some reason, I just don't have any kind of emotional connection to it.
There was 5 movies in the original series. 20th Century Fox had already done franchises in science fiction before Star Wars came along. So I'm always surprised that no one at 20th Century Fox didn't realize the power that Star Wars had when they already had Apes making loads of money for them back in the 70s, before franchises were even a thing in that kind of fashion. So we know Planet of the Apes was a huge success. Charlton Heston gets propelled to the future, meets some apes, escapes, and then we got a sequel because it was so successful. They went and did Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which is pure gonzo pulp madness. It's like a western, and it's like a comic book, and it's got mutants in it, and then they blow up an entire planet. No one was blowing up entire planets back then.
Which is a bit of a plot hole when it gets to Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
It wasn't. Well, this is the thing, you see. Paul Dehn wrote that. Arthur Jacobs sent he didn't send him a text, didn't have text back then, but he sent him a message saying, apes exist, meaning I want a sequel. We made a lot of money. I love that fact that it was like art and money really working in that way. Hollywood gets it to work. And so he did. He went, fuck it, yeah, I'll come up with a sequel for you. So what did he do? He used the same premise as the first one, time travel, only they travel back, basically sealing the circle. So the apes come back, and suddenly we're thrown into a fear of these apes because they mark what might be the future. What's interesting as well of that movie is that it was the most contemporary of all the films in terms of the went to the actual time and place and talking about the era's issues without so simply the garbs of sci-fi.
I think it's the best of the sequels.
There's no doubt about that.
I'm no big fan of the first one anyway, so like it's to me it's as good as the first one, you know.
You see, I think your generation can't get past those masks that we all thought were fantastic.
No, it's nothing to do with special effects or the masks or any of that kind of stuff. It's just a film I never clicked it. I don't know. It's not a bad film, but to me, I just don't have any affection for it, you know. But I can admire its success. I can admire its story. I can admire what it did for the sci-fi genre and all that kind of thing. And it created a kind of an iconic. It's an iconic film. So, in fairness to it, but this particular sequel, I do admire its ideas. And I do admire the kind of satirical undertones and the kind of my favorite scenes are the ones, in front of the politicians. It has those scenes as well of them, shopping in Los Angeles and getting the suits and becoming celebrities, so there's all this kind of satirical stuff going on, which is very, it's amusing and all that. But in fairness to it, the ending is, quite a shocker.
It's a shocker considering there's so much humor up until the halfway mark. It's quite funny and silly. It's incredibly silly, in fact.
Yeah, and that is a great shot, actually. When they arrive on the beach in the space wear and they take off the helmets and whoa, it's monkeys. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said monkeys because they don't like that.
No, it's a derogative term to call them monkeys. It's another issue they go into is racism through animals. I mean, the constant badgering is humans are assholes. As Zira says, I've met hundreds of them. And there's only 3 of them I can trust. But this one, they also sowed the seeds for the later movies because we learned that the reason apes became quite prominent within society is because cats and dogs were killed by a nasty disease brought back from space travel. Which I like that dig against space travel as well. We're warning us all, if you keep going out there in space, you're going to bring bugs back and kill everybody. That was a big fear at the time. Don't forget the Andromeda strain is all about that as well. But yeah, that ending, as you say, like the big killer for them is when suddenly they realize Zira's pregnant and these people can make more monkeys, which means they'll make more talking monkeys. Beautiful idea. Unfortunately, I don't think the money wasn't there to do something with it. And Don Taylor is a real working director.
Oh yeah.
It feels like a TV movie.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of my problems with it is it feels so inactive for a long time. There's not, whereas Psycho 2 we were mentioned about the pace. This is the complete opposite. Don Taylor, didn't he do Damien, The Omen 2?
Which I like.
Yeah.
He also did Island of Dr. Moreau.
And The Final Countdown with fucking Martin Sheen and who else was it?
Another time travel movie.
Jesus.
Do you think someone went, we need a time travel director here? Let's go and get Don Taylor. He did a brilliant job at the last one.
Typecast director.
A lot of stuff that pops up in Escape is actually little nods to the encounters the human had in the original book. There's a bit of trivia you didn't need.
No, absolutely.
At least you agree with me. I suppose what I liked about it as a sequel is the way it took the self-fulfilling prophecy element of it, and that was fun. It closed the time travel circle and gave another reason for why the apes took off and took over the planet.
I think that's something about the series in general, though, for me, is the overall pacing of the films. No matter what director was behind the camera, there's a certain, I don't know what they call it, staidness or something about that to them. Even the first one.
I disagree. I think the first one is perfectly paced.
But just for me, the execution isn't.
The execution was fantastic in the first one.
For me. I don't know.
You don't think the man who made Patton knew what he was doing?
Well, he knew what he was doing with Patton.
I'm going to have to cut this bit. But anyway, yeah, so from there we had J. Lee Thompson took over for the last 2 movies.
One of the great journeymen. especially when he was working with Charles Bronson in Cannon.
I think he wins the prize for the second most Charles Bronson movies, doesn't he? After Michael Winner. Oh no, I think he wins.
Yeah, probably did. That kind of the run of films in the mid-80s there with him. Fairly solid. 10 to Midnight was good. What was the other one? Oh, there was a good Kinjite, Forbidden Subjects. That was really good. I like that. But he also did Death Wish 4, which is one of the more unfortunate Death Wish films.
I thought they were all unfortunate after Death Wish.
No, man, Death Wish 2 and 3 are masterpieces. What are you talking about?
You say that, and you can't see the masterfully working Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and you can say that about Death Wish 2. But anyway, to close off on the Apes conversation, I just liked it as a sequel because it was someone coming at a point of view of getting paid a gig and saying, I can still say something interesting. And he did it in a very broad and silly fashion that, to me, is quite entertaining.
How do you rate the follow-ups?
Again, great ideas in Conquest. The final one is absolutely nonsense.
Yeah. But wasn't it also one of those series where I think it suffered from the more successful they got? They made bank, but they got cheaper as they went along.
And Escape must have been the cheapest of them because you've got only prosthetics for 3 monkeys, and then yet they couldn't be bothered to have a decent looking chimpanzee in the cage at the end in the circus scenes.
And that's the thing about Escape from Planet of the Apes is that it's not an action or adventure film at all. That's maybe
that's allowed. You're allowed to make films that aren't action.
No, but
films.
Yeah, but in a series which is kind of perceived as a kind of a sci-fi adventure series, it is it's a drama. It's a moral drama and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, it reminds me of Skullduggery with Burt Reynolds, where it's all these grand ideas about using animals as kind of metaphors for human nature and all that kind of thing. So, and again, it's kind of parading them in front of these politicians to make a case. So the closest relative to it for me is Skullduggery, and I enjoy Skullduggery a bit more, but that's usually because of Burt Reynolds.
It's got Burt Reynolds in it.
Yeah. But it's I don't know, even though the other sequels in the franchise probably have a bit more action in them, but they suffer from, they look cheap, they look pretty miserable, you know what I mean? So especially as they went along, they just got worse and worse.
This third one, I said, it's probably the most thoughtful of all the sequels. It has a few interesting comments to make. It's a little bit arch, but it's also a lot of fun.
It has heart. I'll give it that. It has heart.
Thanks for giving it that, Wayne. I appreciate it. I'll rest easy tonight. And on that note, Wayne, what are we doing next week? Or next episode, I should say. I'll start again. What are we doing next episode?
We're going to do the Dirty Harry films in whole, but we'll as usual, we'll pick one film that we want to discuss in the context of that series. So I'm going to go for the Deadpool because it was 1988, 89. It was a different era of Dirty Harry, a different era for Clint, than when it started off in 1971 with the first film. So it'll be good to kind of look at where the series was and how it treated the franchise at that point, as opposed to where it started and its intentions. So Guns N' Roses are in there, Jim Carrey's in there, Liam Neeson is in there. It's mad as a box of frogs, as they say.
I feel I should watch Dirty Harry then. I think I'll actually watch the first one. I was going to say The Enforcer, but if you're watching the Death Knell, I'd like to watch The Burt. And we'll still talk about the other 3 in the middle, which were...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I have to say, my kind of pet favourite is Magnum Force.
I love them all. I think the great thing about Dirty Harry is each of them feels like its own entity. You know what I mean? Not necessarily. They're kind of, you can watch them exclusively of each other, and enjoy them on their own merits and their own side, because they have different directors, different styles. You know what I mean? So if you look at Dirty or Sudden Impact, the fourth one.
I always think of Deadpool as like Meatballs 4.
You getting revenge on me now for Escape?
No. I'm only slightly upset by that. No, it's fun, but I always wonder where I want to discuss where Clint Eastwood's head's at when he makes certain films and goes through certain eras. Because I said to you, and I wasn't joking, that when he started doing those kind of broad comedies, he was feeding off Burt Reynolds. He was definitely looking at what Burt was up to, and he was going after Burt's dollar with any which way you can and every which way but loose. There's no doubt about it. And he went down some mad roads over the years.
Yeah.
You know?
He's an interesting actor, an interesting filmmaker, and he's hard to pin down. He's
Honky Tonk Cadillac, Pink, Free Man.
Oh man, Pink Cadillac. That's another movie I'd love to talk about. I'm probably the only person on the planet who loves that movie.
Well, you can talk about that one as well next week. So, okay, look, we're going to do Clint Eastwood, everybody. We're going to do Clint's career based on his Dirty Harry franchise, and
we'll draw in other films as we talk about each Dirty Harry film.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Thanks for coming and listening to us. Do subscribe, guys. We need subscribers. We need people to come back and give comments, and nice comments if you can help it. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night or good morning or good whatever.